إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله الله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله ولو كره المشركون وإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وإن خير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. We praise Allah Almighty and we thank Him and we give full gratitude to Him. He is the one who has the keys to everything. He is the one who has the dominion and power in His hand, and He is the one who manages our affairs. He is the one who made us, and He is the one who gave us, and He is the one who protects us, and He is the one who guides us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Isra, وَقُرْآنًا فَرَقْنَاهُ لِتَقْرَأَهُ عَلَى النَّاسِ عَلَى مُكْثٍ وَنَزَّلْنَاهُ تَنزِيلًا. Allah describes the Quran here and He says, and a Quran that we have sent it down, فَرَقْنَاهُ, we separated it into pieces, piecemeals. فَرَقْنَاهُ لِتَقْرَأَهُ عَلَى النَّاسِ, so that you'll read it to people or unto people. عَلَى مُكْثٍ, that means slowly, over a prolonged period of time. This is like when you do slow cooking, you will cook something over a very slow fire or low fire so that the flavor and the taste comes out better than if you cook it over high fire. And so the Quran's nature is that it needs to be rehearsed slowly, so it soaks in. وَنَزَّلْنَاهُ تَنزِيلًا, and then we sent it down successively so that each part that comes down links to the other part. And there is a reason why Allah sent it down in this order, because it moves with the events that are moving in our life. Events turn over in our lives and it shapes the way we see the world, and it impacts how we react to it and how we respond. And so the Quran needs to be soaked in slowly, because it goes with the events. To understand why this is the case, you only need to take a look at how the Quran sometimes relates the stories for us so that we can learn from it. We can see that in the story of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam and Fir'aun. The story is related many times in the Quran. However, every single way or single time that the story is being relayed, Allah brings in a new angle to show you something, to bring you an insight that you did not see. So in trying to teach us how the dynamic of power is in society and how decision is made in society and what impacts us, we see that in Surah Al-A'raf, after Musa alayhi salatu wasalam comes before Fir'aun in front of him and shows him the signs to prove that he is a messenger from God, you will see that the Quran says, قَالَ الْمَلَأُ مِنْ قَوْمِ فِرْعَوْنَ. So the elite from among the people of Fir'aun, when they saw what they saw, they said, what? إِنَّ هَذَا لَسَاحِرٌ عَلِيمٌ. This one here, Musa, indeed, he is a very proficient, very knowledgeable sorcerer. And then they said, يُرِيدُ أَن يُخْرِجَكُم مِّنْ أَرْضِكُمْ. His intention is to push you out of your home. That means he wants you to lose control over your homeland. فَمَاذَا تَأْمُرُونَ. So what do you advise that we do? And if you notice here that the Quran uses the plural pronoun, that means this elite, this group of elite, al-mala', those are the ones that are way up on top, very close to Fir'aun. They're talking to another group and they're addressing them in the plural. Now when you read the rest of the verses, you will see how the Quran switched the pronoun from the plural, al-jam' to al-mufrad. And then the Quran says here, قالوا this group said, قالوا أرجه, you in the single, meaning they are talking now to one person. قالوا أرجه وأخاه, postpone him and his brother, defer them to another time, don't face them off right now. As a tactic, وأرسل في المدائن حاشرين, and send out in the cities nearby, everywhere in Egypt, rallying and looking for resources. يأتوك بكل ساحر عليم, they will bring you, here in the singular, يأتوك, not يأتوكم, يأتوك بكل ساحر عليم, they'll bring you every sorcerer that is very knowledgeable. So you could see from here that this group of the elite, al-Mala, are talking to another group, and this group recommended that this should be the strategy. This is in Surah Al-A'raf. When you move to Surah Taha, and you read in Surah Taha, where in Fir'aun, again the same scene, where Musa is standing before Fir'aun, and then he produces his evidence for him. And then now you see Al-Quran telling us in Surah Taha, in verse 57, the Quran says, where Fir'aun is saying to Musa, قَالَ أَجِئْتَنَا لِتُخْرِجَنَا مِنْ أَرْضِنَا بِسِحْرِكَ يَا Musa, did you come to us so that you will push us out of our land with your sorcery, O Musa? فَلَنَأْتِيَنَّكَ بِسِحْرٍ مِثْلِهِ, we will bring another sorcery like it to face you. So notice here how Fir'aun is saying, did you come to us to push us out of our land? So the key phrase here, pushing us out of our land, and it is sorcery. Then in Surah Al-Shu'ara, we see that the same story is relayed. And then after Musa is having a discussion with Fir'aun, and Fir'aun is asking about who created the heavens and the earth and who is your Lord and all of this, you'll see that the Quran says that Fir'aun turned around over to the elite that are around him. قَالَ لِلْمَلَإِ حَوْلَهُ, here Fir'aun said to the elite around him, standing by him, حَوْلَهُ إِنَّ هَذَا لَسَاحِرٌ عَلِيمٌ, this is a very proficient, knowledgeable sorcerer. It's the same statement. يريد أن يخرجكم من أرضكم بسحره, he intends to push you out of your land. He's addressing the elite. To take you out of your land, the control that you have over the land, that means this is a national threat. So he identified him as a national threat already, like he said before in the other verse in Surah Taha. بسحره, with his sorcery. فماذا تأمرون, what do you advise me at this point? قالوا, so the Quran says here, they said to him, أرجه وأخاه, postpone him and his brother, وَبَعَثْ فِي الْمَدَائِنِ حَاشِرِينَ, very similar to the other verse, sent out in the cities, gathering the resources and rallying them up. يَأْتُوكَ بِكُلِّ سَحَّارٍ عَلِيمٍ, they'll bring you every practitioner of sihr. That means here they are pointing to the fact that they'll bring you somebody with long experience, because that's what he does, sahar, not only sahir, but sahar. بِكُلِّ سَحَّارٍ عَلِيمٍ, and he is very knowledgeable. That is not only that his experience has a wide experience because he practices it, but his ilm or knowledge with the sihr, when the details of it, he is very well in tune and in depth with the practice of his sihr. And so you notice here how the Quran brought the story in three different flavors for us. And then you say, okay, so who said to who? Was it that Fir'aun told the elite first this, or did the elite actually brought up this statement? The key to this is the Quran is showing us how the opinion was being formulated from the top down. Starting with Fir'aun, he is the one who advanced the idea first. قَالَ لِلْمَلَإِ حَوْلَ, he said to his elite, that is the way I see things, so this is the way it's going to go. إِنَّ هَذَا لَسَاحِرٌ عَلِيمٌ, so this is a very proficient sorcerer. he wants to push you. So the intent is he wants to push us out of our land. So this is a conspiracy. So this is the opinion that you have to stick with. And this is the story that he wants out. And that is the narrative that he wants to feed to the masses. Al-Mala, the elite around him, understood that when Fir'aun says something, that means this is the way it's going to go. So Al-Mala, the elite, in Surah Al-A'raf, the Quran gives us now the picture of that Al-Mala themselves, the elite, are talking to another group. So that means they went down to the lower group, the group that are the doers on the ground. They are the ones that are going to work the grounds. And so Al-Mala are talking to the people on the ground, and they're telling them, listen, this is the message. This is a sorcerer. He wants to take you out of your land. Okay? So, what do you advise? So when Fir'aun says, فَمَاذَا تَأْمُرُونَ, what do you guys advise me, the elite? The elite went down one level to the ones on the ground and asked, what do you instruct us to do? You're working the grounds. You know. This is where they said, here, the message to the elite, to send it to Fir'aun, that this is what you need to do. You need to postpone the confrontation. Don't go direct with him. Go find all the proficient sorcerers in society, gather them up to actually face Musa. This is the recommended plan. So you can see from here how the decision is being formulated from the top down, which means here Fir'aun started out with a story, started out with a narrative. This is what he wanted done, which means he already determined that this is sihr, even though he is not the expert in sihr. But he determined that this is already sihr. And not only that, but he went further and determined this is a plot and a ploy to take the power out of his hand and out of the elite in society. So that means there's a threat and it's a conspiracy. So this is what we have to face. When the boss at the top says this is the story, and now what he wants is he wants the expertise. Those who are proficient in sihr or sorcery, they're the ones that are going to come in and face Fir'aun. So he's relying on the expertise to back him up with what he says. And then as you can see, that when the experts came and tried to face Fir'aun, Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, their assessment of the situation on the ground when they faced Musa is that Musa is no sorcerer, and whatever he was doing was not sorcery. So when they gave their statement and their judgment of the situation, and they told Fir'aun that this is not sorcery by action, by prostrating on the ground, then he immediately now turned to the alternative, and the alternative is that you and him are in cahoots, you and him have planned all of this, and this is a plan that you guys have hatched together and made up in the city before you showed up in front of me. That means this is an internal job. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله العلي العظيم لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحابته أجمعين. رضينا بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا ومحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم نبيا ورسولا. We have just learned how the Quran conveyed to us some insight into how power uses the forces in society to instruct it, to shape how the message is supposed to be to the masses. We see that how power filtered down the decision, where it floated down from the top down, and every layer of the power understood that when the boss says what he says, then it has to be carried through. It reminded me of a story was shared to me by one of my friends at some point back during the Arab Spring when it was happening, and Muammar al-Gaddafi was being removed from power by the revolution that happened in Libya and by the rise up that happened against him. And he was telling me about how brutal of al-Qaddafi was and his tactics were. But the story that he shared with me was more about that when the boss says this is the way it is, it doesn't matter what the facts on the ground are. You're going to make the facts to be what the boss says. He told me about the story how Muammar al-Qaddafi promised the people of Libya to build them this huge river that's going to bring them water from the south and irrigate all this area. He spent billions and billions of dollars on this project. And this project ended up nowhere. No water was ever brought up. And not only this, but he was promoting an idea at the time of using water that is in the ground. And this person who studied in the US, who studied environmental effects, and he was into the habitat and civil engineering and so on, wanted to help his country at the time. So he was trying to advise the Libyan leader at the time that this is not the correct plan, that the plan, if you do this, you're going to ruin a lot of the basin water that is underneath the ground. And it's not going to help much. And that you're going to dry up the land, and then it's going to be very salty, and you're not going to be able to plant anything. So he came to meet with the leader, and he was a known expert. He met with Muammar al-Qaddafi for a short time, he told me. He gave him his opinion, he rendered his expertise opinion. The security forces were sitting with him at the time, listening. And so after he was done, he came out of the meeting, and then he moved out, and he was walking out, and then he was taken by the security apparatus of the Libyan state. They took him into a room, and then they beat him senseless. And then he kept asking them, "Why are you beating me? Why are you hitting? What did I do? Did I say something to offend the leader? Did I say something that wasn't right? I was merely advising him on what is the proper opinion for handling the project." They kept beating him, and then finally they stopped and they told him, "You asked us why?" And he said, "Yes." He says, they told him, "This is so that you learn that when the boss says something, the only thing you can say is exactly what the boss said. Don't give him an opinion or don't say anything to oppose his opinion." This is how dictatorship and authoritarian regimes operate. So of course the guy learned his lesson. We see similar things that we have learned over the course of the weeks, especially this week. Like, for example, we've seen that the head of the CDC, Dr. Redfield, the one that was appointed by the President of the United States to oversee the COVID-19 crisis through the CDC, and when he was given his testimony in the hearing a couple of days ago, he was asked by Congress certain questions, and he answered. And he did say that basically the mask is your best defense, and the vaccine that the president has been talking about isn't really going to give you that quick of a reaction of immunity, and that's going to take a long time. Now, the president came afterwards within a day or half a day to actually tell everybody in the United States in front of camera that the head of the CDC, Dr. Redfield, the expert, he didn't know what he's talking about, and that he was actually misinformed. We go back to the same point, is that when the president says something, the story he says, you shall not conflict it or contradict it. This is again in light of what we hear recently, that when certain people in the CDC and in other agencies, they were asked to actually doctor up the statements they're going to have to say because they didn't want them to run contradictory to what the president is saying. In the end, we're faced with somebody who knows more than the experts. He knows more than the doctors. He knows more than the scientists. He knows more than the politicians, the generals. He knows more than the technocrats. He knows more than the intelligent agencies. He knows everything better than anybody else. This is exactly what we've been communicated to and told to follow and to believe in. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to show us the truth as truth and falsehood as falsehood. Allahumma arina al-haqqa haqqan warzuqna ittiba'ah wa arina al-batila batilan warzuqna ijtinabah. Allahumma inna nas'aluka al-afwa wal-afiyya fi ad-dunya wal-akhirah. اللهم إنا نسألك العفو والعافية في ديننا ودنيانا وأهلنا وأموالنا. اللهم استر عوراتنا وآمن روعاتنا. اللهم احفظنا من بين أيدينا ومن خلفنا وعن أيماننا وعن شمائلنا ومن فوقنا ونعوذ بعظمتك أن نغتال من تحتنا. اللهم إنا نعوذ بك أن نضل أو نضل أو نزل أو نزل أو نظلم أو نظلم أو نجهل أو يجهل علينا. اللهم اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وإسرافنا في أمرنا. اللهم اغفر لنا من عندك مغفرة إنك أنت الغفور الرحيم. ارحمنا وأنت خير الراحمين. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.